The subway platform was alive with movement, sound, and impatience. Trains roared in and out like restless beasts, drowning the air with metal screams and rushing wind. People stood shoulder to shoulder, eyes fixed on glowing phone screens, minds already racing toward meetings, deadlines, and unfinished dreams. No one had time to notice the quiet figures, the ones who moved slower, who existed on the edges of everyone else's hurry. The old man stood near the ticket machines, clutching a small stack of worn books against his chest. Their covers were faded, the corners bent from years of careful handling. His coat was too thin for the season, and the fabric shivered with him as the cold crept through the underground station. Each step he took seemed measured, cautious, as if the world beneath his feet could suddenly give way. As the crowd surged forward, someone bumped into him from behind. The books slipped from his arms and scattered across the platform floor. He bent down slowly, knees stiff, fingers shaking as he reached for the nearest one. That was when the salesman turned. He was well dressed, sharp suit, polished shoes, a man who moved fast and expected the world to move with him. His phone was pressed to his ear, his voice tense with irritation. When he felt the brush of the old man's shoulder, he snapped. "Watch where you're going," he barked, spinning around. The old man looked up, startled. His eyes were pale, tired, filled with a lifetime of quiet endurance. I'm sorry," he said quickly. "The crowd pushed me, but the apology came too late." In a flash of anger, too quick for thought, too loud for reason, the salesman raised his hand and slapped the old man across the face. The sound cracked through the station, sharp and final, like a door being slammed shut. Everything stopped. Conversations died mid-sentence. Footsteps froze. Even the echo of the trains seemed to fade. The old man staggered back, nearly losing his balance. His books slid farther across the floor, pages splayed open like wounded birds. He touched his cheek, more surprised than hurt. Slowly, he straightened himself. There was no anger in his face. No outrage, only confusion. And something heavier, something that looked painfully like sadness. "I'm sorry," he whispered again, his voice barely louder than the hum of the station. "I didn't see you." The salesman stood there, chest rising and falling, his hands still trembling in the air. For a brief moment, he seemed to expect the crowd to take his side, to justify his rage. But no one spoke. Dozens of people watched in silence, each one feeling the weight of what had just happened, and the uncomfortable truth that none of them had stopped it. And in that stillness, as the old man bent down to pick up his fallen hat, something unseen began to shift, setting into motion a moment that would soon change every life on that platform. The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. It pressed down on the subway platform, thick and uncomfortable, as if the air itself was holding its breath. The old man crouched slowly, one knee touching the cold concrete, his movements careful and uncertain. His hands trembled as he reached for his hat, which had rolled a few feet away. He paused for a moment, steadying himself, then picked it up and brushed the dust from its worn brim. Around him, people stood frozen. Some stared openly, eyes wide with shock. Others turned away, suddenly fascinated by the arrival board, their phones, the wall, anything that would save them from meeting the old man's gaze. No one spoke. No one moved to help. The salesman cleared his throat, breaking the quiet. He shifted his weight, straightening his jacket as if adjusting his appearance could erase what had just happened. His phone buzzed in his hand, but he ignored it. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. He had expected resistance, maybe even applause. Instead, he was surrounded by judgment without words. The old man tried to stand. His legs wobbled, and he reached instinctively for a nearby pillar to steady himself. The salesman noticed this, really noticed it, for the first time. The man's shoulders were narrow beneath his thin coat. His shoes were scuffed, soles worn uneven from years of careful steps. This was not a man who pushed others out of carelessness. This was a man who survived by moving gently through the world. "I didn't mean to bother you," the old man said again, not looking up. His voice carried no resentment, only fatigue. "It's difficult in crowds." The words struck something deep inside the salesman. He felt an unfamiliar tightening in his chest, a discomfort that had nothing to do with anger. He glanced around, suddenly aware of how many eyes were watching him. not with fear, but with quiet disappointment. A child tugged at her mother's sleeve and whispered, "Why did he hit the grandpa?" The mother didn't answer. She pulled her child closer. The old man finally stood upright, though his balance remained unsteady. He bent to collect the books that lay scattered near his feet. As he lifted one, a photograph slipped from between its pages and fluttered to the ground. He picked it up carefully, his fingers lingering on the edges. "My wife used to hold my arm here," he said softly, almost to himself. He touched his elbow, a small, familiar gesture. "She always said I walked too fast." His voice cracked, just slightly. The salesman followed his gaze to the photograph. A younger version of the old man smiled from it, standing beside a woman with kind eyes and a warm expression. Something about that image, the ordinary happiness captured in it, felt painfully human. "She can't anymore," the old man added. "So I try not to get lost." The silence returned, deeper now. He placed the photograph back into the book, adjusted his hat, and prepared to move on, as if being struck in public were simply another obstacle to step around. But the salesman didn't look away this time. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of another person's life, and the crushing realization that anger, once released, could never be taken back. And in that moment of wordless understanding, the true cost of the slap began to reveal itself. The old man had taken only a few steps away when a voice cut through the quiet. "Wait." It was soft but steady, and it came from a young woman standing near the edge of the platform. She lowered her phone, her hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from resolve. The crowd shifted, surprised that someone had finally broken the silence. "That man," she said, pointing gently toward the old man, "comes here every single day." The old man stopped. He turned slowly, confusion clouding his face. "I see him in the mornings and evenings," the woman continued. "Rain, snow, holidays, it doesn't matter. He stands right there." She gestured toward the spot near the ticket machines. "He sells those books for a few coins, never asking for more." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Heads turned. People who had passed the old man 100 times suddenly saw him clearly. "He's not a beggar," the woman said firmly. "He's a retired literature teacher. Those books are his own." The salesman felt the words land like stones in his chest. He looked again at the thin stack of books in the old man's arms. Not trash, not clutter, but carefully chosen volumes. Classics, poetry, stories about love, loss, and hope. The old man shook his head slightly. "Please," he said quietly. "There's no need." But the woman wasn't finished. "He does this because his wife is sick," she said, her voice tightening. "Very sick." The platform grew still again. The salesman swallowed. "Sick how?" he asked before he could stop himself. The old man hesitated. His fingers tightened around the book covers. "She has Alzheimer's," he said at last. "Some days she remembers our life together. Some days," he paused, searching for the right words. "Some days she looks at me like I'm a stranger who knows too much." A sharp ache spread through the salesman's chest. The old man continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Today she forgot my name." A collective breath was drawn. A woman pressed her hand to her mouth. An elderly man lowered his head. "I sell the books for her medicine," the old man said. "The pension isn't enough, and I don't want charity." He lifted his eyes, steady and proud. "I want to earn what I can, while I still remember who I am." The salesman felt his knees weaken. Images rushed through his mind. His own impatience, his raised hand, the sound of the slap echoing again and again. The old man had not defended himself. Not because he was weak, but because his strength was being spent elsewhere. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," the old man added gently. "I just didn't want to be late getting home. She gets scared when I'm not there." The salesman lowered his head. Shame burned his face hotter than any anger ever had. For the first time in his life, he understood something devastatingly simple. He had not struck an old man. He had struck a husband who was fighting every day to hold on to love, memory, and dignity. And in that realization, something inside him began to break, making room for something new. The salesman stood motionless, as if the ground beneath him had shifted. The noise of the station slowly returned, the distant rumble of an approaching train, the murmur of voices, but inside him, there was only a loud, relentless silence. His hand, the same hand that had struck the old man, trembled at his side. He stared at it as if seeing it for the first time, then slowly clenched it into a fist, not in anger, but in shame. Every success he had chased, every deal he had closed, suddenly felt small and meaningless compared to the quiet strength standing before him. The old man adjusted his coat and turned to leave. "Please, wait," the salesman said. His voice cracked. Several people turned, surprised. The old man paused but did not face him. "I don't deserve your time," the salesman continued, stepping forward. "And I know words won't fix what I did." He took a breath, then did something no one expected. He lowered himself to his knees. The crowd gasped. Phones slipped from hands. A businessman kneeling on a subway platform was a sight no one had ever seen. "I lost my temper," the salesman said, his voice shaking. "But you lost far more today, and every day, and you still showed kindness. I am ashamed." The old man turned slowly. His eyes widened, not with triumph, but with concern. "You don't need to do this," he said softly. "Yes," the salesman replied. "I do." He slipped off his expensive coat, the one that had cost more than the old man's books combined. Gently, almost reverently, he placed it over the old man's shoulders, adjusting it so the cold wouldn't reach him. "Please," he said, "take it. At least this." The old man hesitated, then nodded once. "Thank you." The salesman stood and reached into his wallet. He pulled out bills, then stopped himself. Slowly, he gathered every book from the old man's arms, holding them as if they were fragile treasures. "I'll take them all," he said. "Not as charity, as stories worth reading." Tears welled in the old man's eyes. His lips trembled, but he smiled. "Then I will choose one for you," he said. "The one that teaches patience." The crowd shifted closer now. Someone helped the old man steady himself. Another person added money to the stack without a word. A chain reaction of quiet generosity spread, small gestures, sincere and unspoken. The salesman helped the old man stand. "Let me walk you home," he offered. "Or at least to your train." The old man studied his face for a long moment, then placed a hand on his arm, the same place his wife once held. "Kindness," he said, "is strongest when it is learned the hard way." The train arrived, its doors sliding open. The salesman did not rush. For the first time in years, he was not thinking about where he was going, only about who he was becoming. And as the crowd watched him stand beside the old man, no longer above him but equal, they understood something rare. Sometimes redemption begins the moment we choose humility over pride. The train doors slid open with a soft metallic sigh, and warm air rushed out to meet the cold of the platform. People began to step inside, but no one pushed. No one rushed. It was as if time itself had slowed, allowing everyone to carry the weight of what they had just witnessed. The old man took a careful step forward, then another. The salesman stayed beside him, matching his pace, holding the stack of books close to his chest. When the old man hesitated at the doorway, the salesman gently offered his arm. The old man smiled, a small, fragile smile, but real. He rested his hand there, just for a moment. "Thank you," he said. "My wife used to say the world moves too fast for old bones." The salesman swallowed. "I think I've been running for so long," he replied quietly, "that I forgot how to walk." They found a seat together. Across from them, strangers watched with softened expressions. A young boy leaned toward his father and whispered, "Is that Grandpa okay now?" The father nodded. "Yes," he said, "because people remembered to be human." As the train began to move, the old man opened one of the books the salesman had bought. He traced a line of text with his finger, as if grounding himself in familiar words. "Stories help us remember who we are," he said, "even when memory fades." The salesman looked at the book covers again, titles about love, sacrifice, forgiveness. He realized these were lessons he had spent his entire life avoiding. When the train reached the old man's stop, the salesman stood with him. "I'll walk you the rest of the way," he said. "If that's all right." The old man nodded. "My wife will be happy to know someone new showed kindness today." As they stepped onto the platform, the old man paused and turned back. "I was angry once," he said gently. "Many years ago. But anger is loud, and kindness is quiet. In the end, only one stays with you. The doors closed. The train pulled away. Back on the original platform, people slowly returned to their routines, but something had changed. A woman helped another stranger pick up dropped papers. A man offered his seat without being asked. Small kindnesses rippled outward, unseen but powerful. And somewhere beyond the station walls, an old man returned home with medicine for his wife, a warm coat on his shoulders, and a story to tell her, one she might forget by morning, but feel in her heart all the same. As for the salesman, he never raised his hand in anger again. Because that day, on a crowded platform, he learned a truth that changed his life forever. One moment of compassion can echo longer than a lifetime of regret.